Keep it down in front.
Come to order.
Come to order.
Ready? Okay, we ready to start? 3 o'clock, a couple minutes after. Thank you for coming this afternoon. We are doing the presentation today on AB 481, which is the military equipment, which was signed here recently. Melanie Schaefer is my executive assistant. She's going to be helping. She brought comment cards and some other stuff for people that had comments, but I think with this group we can just open it up once we're done. So short presentation to go over it. I'll start off with the agenda. So we're going to start off with what exactly is AB 481, how AB 481 defines military equipment, the requirements for the Reading Police Department to comply with AB 481, our current inventory that falls under that, and why the Reading Police Department needs this equipment. So we'll start off first with what is AB 481. So September 30th of 2021, the governor signed this bill into legislation. It falls under Government Code 7071 and 7072. It was signed with 9 other police reform bills at that time. It was to increase transparency, accountability, and oversight for the use of this equipment by police departments. So part of that was to create engagement with the public, and that's what we're here today for. So military equipment, there were several different categories, so I will let you read those. Some we only have about half of the categories actually we have. So these are all listed on our policy, which is on our website. So if you want to go look at that, you can. There's page 2 of what is required, what actually is military equipment under this bill. And as I continue, you'll see that some of this was kind of a shock for us because it really didn't feel like, military equipment when you think of that or when the public thinks of that. What is military equipment? Our command vehicle that we use for our major events falls under that. Our UAVs. So the Reading Police Department is required to, one, have our department policy for that. So we have Lexible Policy 707, which was posted on our website on March 2nd. The law required us to have that posted 30 days prior to going to City Council for approval. It required within 30 days of that City Council meeting to have a public meeting, which is what we're having today. And then tentatively on April 5th, we will be going to City Council to discuss the military equipment that we have at the Reading Police Department for approval, and then also approval of a new municipal code, which is required also under the law. So our city attorney has drafted a municipal code for that. Our annual requirements thereafter is to every year after it is passed by the City Council, if passed, we will go back and provide an annual report. We'll have a community meeting, and we will talk about in that annual report that'll be posted on our website and to City Council and in the community meeting, everything that falls under that military equipment. How many times did we use it? What did we use it for? And what was the cost of having that equipment? Also, anything that falls under military equipment under 481, we will have to go back to council for approval before purchasing that. So one of the ones that falls under 481 is our armored vehicle. So that is one that sometimes comes up in public forums. Why do we have an armored vehicle? We had a list of our armored vehicle and uses for that, but just in the last week, I'll just use 2 examples that we had, one last night and one this weekend. We had a gentleman that was downtown in one of our bars that got into an argument and started shooting a pistol. I'm sure all of you have seen that in the media. Nobody was injured in that, but if somebody was, the rescue vehicle and having an armored vehicle to respond to an incident like that, which this was deployed, it was deployed twice on that shift on Friday night, to be able to go in and rescue injured people and get them out of there, and also to protect our officers to approach that scene and to take care of, to keep our public safe. The second that night was a domestic violence incident where The suspect had shot a shotgun at a vehicle. Our officers used the Bearcat to approach that resident safely and to have that person come out and take that person into custody. Last night, the Sheriff's Office requested us for the shooting that they had in Mountain Gate. We responded with our Bearcat. The victim was injured and down in the driveway, so they were able to use the Bearcat to safely approach that. Unfortunately, the victim was deceased, but if that was a victim that was not deceased, that was injured, the location where they were at and being out in the country environment, there was no safe way for our officers to approach or the Sheriff's Office to approach without having an armored vehicle. The suspect, they didn't know if the suspect was still on scene or not. So that's just a couple examples. We've deployed the Bearcat this new Bearcat 47 times since we've purchased it. The Reading Police Department has had an armored vehicle in its fleet since 2005 was when we purchased our first one. So we've had an armored vehicle in our fleet for quite a while, and it is a very valuable tool for our police department. The Mobile Command Center, which was recently purchased in a partnership with all city departments, including REU, and the fire mitigation plan, is open to all city entities. A recent example of using that was the tanker spill downtown, which we deployed the Mobile Command Center. So this is considered under AB 41 to be military equipment. We've used it on the Mountain Gate fire that we had. We deployed it. And the benefit of it is we can put 3 dispatchers inside the mobile command vehicle and work on communication with our officers, and then all other city departments will respond actually to the scene at the command post and be able to use this new vehicle. So it's been very beneficial just in the short time we've had it. The UAV program, so this was also, we started this program and it has grown just because of the use of it and the benefit to our police department and the city. Also a partnership with the fire mitigation and REU. We use the UAVs for checking the power lines for REU as required under the fire mitigation. And then we also use them at least on a weekly basis. We're deploying our UAVs. Again, it's an officer safety tool to be able to deploy a UAV. They used the UAV last night in the Mountain Gate incident with the Sheriff's Office to check different areas for the suspect when they were looking for him out in the wooded area, which they ultimately did take him into custody. So how does AB 481 affect the City of Reading? With City Council approval, RPD will continue to use the equipment that we currently have. And we will continue to monitor and prepare our report for next year with the existing software that we have. So we use a software called Blue Team currently that tracks all of our use of force and also the deployment of anything that falls under our military equipment. So there's no software, there's nothing different that we will have to do in preparing that report. We'll just gather that data at the annual report time. Without City Council approval, then we will cease the use of the equipment. We have 180 days for the City Council to make a determination after April 5th. If they say that we cannot use it anymore, we will stop using that equipment, and then we will adjust our policies and procedures and operating procedures, not having that valuable equipment for us. So the bottom line on why do we need this equipment in the City of Reading is the City of Reading is in a unique position as being one of the largest cities in the North State. We are looked at and relied upon on a lot of our smaller agencies. This equipment is needed for our public safety and to resolve problems. If we did not have that, we would need to call either Sacramento, most likely would be the closest for a lot of this equipment. Butte and Chico would be able to come. So we're looking at an hour to 2-hour response to get some of this equipment up here if we had an event happen. The armored vehicle and the breaching and the other equipment that we have, a city this size and for what we are doing on a daily basis is vital for us to complete our job. We are lucky to have a community that supports our police department and supports the equipment that we use. They trust us as a police department and our leadership to use this equipment properly. And I think that we do that, and we show that every day out here. So basically, short presentation. The policy, everything on AB 41 is listed on our website. So if you have any questions on that, there's also a question tab once you get to there. If you have questions regarding AB 41 and anything with military equipment, you can fill that out and we will respond to you. So with that, I will open it up to any questions on what we have and anything to do with 481. Any questions in the, go ahead.
So you mentioned that you have a fleet of the Bearcat, those military. How many do you have? And my follow-up question to that is, what evidence is there that those type of vehicles are helpful in, I think you said, the peaceful resolution of, because I know from a non-law enforcement perspective, there's a concern about what we might be saying or doing to escalate situations, that kind of, the optics of I'm coming in with a tank.
Yes. Yeah. So you saw the picture. You saw the picture of the truck. So that's why we put that in the slideshow, because some people think of an armored vehicle as a tank, right. And it is not. It's built on a truck chassis. So we only have one. It's only one vehicle. It replaced the one that we had purchased back in 2005. So there's only one. It's only used on incidents that the watch commander or the sergeant supervisor that's on duty deems necessary for that. So it would have to be a significant event involving firearms, most likely, are the most common. But having that armored vehicle for our officer safety, but then also if you have an active shooter where you have victims down, to be able to, our police vehicles don't have armor. They're not an armored vehicle. So if there's somebody that has a rifle that's continuing to shoot and there's victims down, the only way for our officers to safely get in and get those victims out is with an armored vehicle. So it's not out patrolling. It's only used on certain circumstances where the safety deems to have it deployed.
So it's more peaceful because you feel as an officer you're protected by that. It doesn't escalate in that sense.
Yes.
But it sounds to me that more than protecting the officers, it's protecting the person that you're trying to find.
If there's victims, correct? Yes. So our officers, they'll do officer down and victim rescues with that, with training. So it allows us to go into what we would call a hot scene, where there might be somebody still shooting or we don't know where the suspect is. If somebody's laying down in a street, obviously we saw it happen down in Davis when they tried to, in Sacramento, when they tried to go in, officers tried to go in to recover an officer that was down, and more officers got shot because they didn't have the armored vehicle there. With an armored vehicle, we have the ability to come in, keep our officers safe, and get either that victim or the victim officer out of there in medical attention.
So do you have a medic? I mean, who staffs that Bearcat?
It depends on the situation. So if it is a pre-planned event, then we do have a medic that is in the truck that's assigned to our SWAT team, so for immediate response. And then we also have medical staged on pre-planned events. So the incident on Friday night at the bar downtown, obviously that wasn't a planned event. So one of the officers that's on duty will get notified by the sergeant to deploy the Bearcat, and the Bearcat an officer will bring that out.
But might not have a medic in it at that point.
Correct.
But do you have deals with the hospitals and stuff that you can call up and say, I have this guy and
yeah, so
what's going on?
So medical will stage. Their policies will not allow them to come into a still hot zone where there might be a suspect still shooting. So we can get the victim out in that armored vehicle and then to the ambulance that's waiting in our staging area. Yeah.
The UAV program, other than a hot zone, using it for a hot zone, would the police department use it for private resident viewing, or you have to get permission, or that's not part of the whole program, other than a hot zone? So
the only time that we deploy the UAVs for the police department would be for a call for service. We don't just deploy them just to go and fly them around and look at stuff. It's if we have somebody that crashes in a stolen vehicle and runs into a field, we'll deploy the UAV to try to find that person. But we don't just deploy the UAV just to fly it around and look in people's yards.
And one more, regarding future purchases of military-like equipment, can you foresee something like a tank, small, medium, or large tank in the mix, or is that something you evaluate as you go on?
No, the only thing that we would ever look at is the Bearcat. The Lenco Bearcat is an industry standard in the United States. Across many departments have them, and so we have one, and right now that seems to be sufficient for our area to have one here. Go ahead.
You mentioned you only have one here. What would be the radius that this would be sent out on for serious issues, as far as Anderson, Central Valley?
So that's the chief of police's call as our policy is written. If we get an outside agency assist request, then that determination will be done by the chief. If there's an agency that is asking for that, we'll send that to help that agency, whether that be, we have such small communities, Mount Shasta, Wairika, that don't have the ability to use an armored vehicle. So if they called, that would be the chief's call ultimately. But I believe he'd be supportive in setting that for any agency that needs that.
Do you have formal agreements with folks? I mean, like with the sheriff's office and so on? Are there formal memorandums of agreements of some kind? Or?
As far as, we have several of them depending on.
And I'm talking about using the military equipment.
No, so if we deploy a Bearcat out, our officers will go with the Bearcat and our officers drive that Bearcat. So we'll send 2 every time that is deployed outside of our area. So we don't take our armored vehicle and give it to an agency to use because it's our vehicle. Our officers will stay and operate that, but they won't be involved in the actual incident other than being a driver.
And this is a little cold, but are you reimbursed for that, the use of that in a different law enforcement?
Depending on the incident and the level of the incident, if it raises to the level of mutual aid declared by the governor or by the federal government, then we can get reimbursed. Most incidents where the Bearcat would be deployed would not be reimbursable. Just like if we had an incident happen here, which we have, and we've asked outside agencies to come, they will come and assist us. We have Cool April Nights that's coming up, and we are going to, outside agencies have all said, hey, if you need additional people, we'll send 2 or 3 officers to help you for those large events. It's just with our sizes of our departments and budget needs, we all are in agreement to help each other out to do the best job we can.
Has it ever been used in a fire situation?
I would refer to Levi. Can you remember?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, on Shasta, we had an incident where a lady had set her house on fire, and we used it in that situation. I'm not sure what the final out. Did she give up on that, or was she get that?
No, she came out of the house.
She came out of the house. Yeah.
She was running the whole house out around her, trying to protect the house to the left and right, and it's in both those. Shots was a good one.
But as far as like car fire type situations, nothing like that. More tactical type environments where somebody's either shooting within a residence or they'll light their house on fire like that because they're trying to cover a crime that they maybe just committed or something. And that type of scenarios.
Interesting.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Annalise. I'm with Shasta Scout. The UAVs, are those deployed during events like protest events?
It depends on on the incident command and what we need. We have deployed them in recent events and just to get intelligence instead of flying the CHP helicopter and the cost of that. It's much more cost effective to fly a UAV for that.
So is that an incident by incident? The person in charge at the time makes the decision on whether intelligence is needed versus for us? Or?
Correct.
Could you give us an idea how many times that's happened?
As far as protests, we've had very few. So the recent protests that we did have, we did deploy UAVs on several of those to get intelligence.
So what about other times that you would use them that aren't something happening? Is there anything equal to a protest that would get you to consider using it?
Not that I can think of unless they're, to prevent crime and to give intelligence. If you look at the protests, especially the ones that we deployed it in for recently, if we send in a police officer, it might entice the crowd and to get that intelligence, as opposed to having a UAV provide that information back to our command post.
So you're referring to those incidents, those protests, that happened last year?
Yes, those are the only ones we've had.
But it could be used at something essential to school April nights, just to give.
That's what I was wondering.
Just
That's
some
where I was
perspective.
going with my question.
Yeah, just some perspective on how large maybe the crowd is, or where people are forming up. Just some situational awareness for people that aren't on the ground. They're
To get a
maybe at the
picture.
station.
We actually used it the 4th of July, the Freedom Festival at the Pacific this last year. It actually gave us a good idea for planning like exit plans for like the future, because we were able to see the route that the crowds were kind of exiting and where our problems were with traffic. And we identified a couple hot spots that we had no traffic control set up at some of
But
these
you could
private.
get
Yeah,
somebody in
so we
there.
were able to move some officers to those locations to stop the traffic until the crowd actually was able to filter back to their vehicles and disperse before they were opening up.
Yeah, it seems like a really valuable piece of equipment to me.
Cheaper than a
personally.
helicopter, too.
Cheaper than a helicopter, although those helicopters are pretty cool.
Go ahead.
What if the city council, for some reason, denies the program? Would you return the equipment to the GSA, sell it, store it?
So all of our equipment has been bought either through the hazard mitigation, our fire mitigation plan, or through general fund. So we would do just like any piece of equipment, if we weren't using it anymore, is most likely resell it if we could, and try to at least recoup some of the cost for the equipment.
And is the council a majority, or must it be a lot? Should the vote? Does the vote have to be a majority, or like 5-0, or
Just majority.
Okay.
Go ahead.
One of your first slides, it had the equipment categories and ones that you own that met the criteria. Does that mean that you have some of the others, but they don't meet the current criteria, or you don't?
No, the highlighted are the only ones that we do have. And our policy actually has each listed in that for each one of those categories.
All right, and my other question about this meeting, so it sounds like this is a public meeting. Is it going to be available on your website for others who want to see and give feedback, if you wanted to share with others, like, to learn?
Yes, we're filming it. It'll be up on our website for others that couldn't make it today to view.
Okay.
And like I said, and there is a link with questions on our website, so you can, if anybody watching that wasn't able to make it today, can ask questions and we'll answer those. Any other questions? And again, if you think of any after you leave, go to the website and just submit them to us, and we'll get those out to you.
Can I ask you an off-the-wall question? Will you bring the UAV to the silver camp?
Probably. Yes. There's the plug for Shasta Youth Leadership Camp.
Yes.
Yes, we have a law enforcement day at Shasta Youth Leadership Camp, and we bring out a lot of the equipment that we use in our canines.
Bring a helicopter.
Yes.
It's quite popular. It's quite popular.
Yes. All right. Thank you for those that showed up. Oh, go ahead.
Does the police department or any law enforcement agency, do you think AB 481, do they consider that to be a restrictive measure, a piece of legislation, or just more a clarification of how cities, communities can use this equipment?
I think it's just transparency and I think there's misinformation out in the public, not so much in our community, but in other communities on law enforcement agencies and the equipment that they have. Like I said earlier, we have a very supportive community, but we also, I think we earn that by doing the right thing and not having tanks, not having some of the equipment that, I think our Bearcat that we do have, our armored vehicle that you see the picture of, I mean, I think that is not a tank. That's a vehicle to keep people safe and to keep all our officers safe. Public safety is number one, and it's a vehicle that keeps our citizens safe and our officers safe, which is what we want.
What is a slug?
Like a shotgun slug?
Oh, is that?
Like,
I was just looking at your list and it said explosive devices and it has number, battering rams, slugs, and breaching apparatus.
so that is for breaching, mostly used, or only used by our SWAT team. So if somebody has barricaded a door, we have frangible rounds that can get them in that door. That's what that is, yeah.
I didn't know what it was.
Yes, and that's not something that is deployed out. It's a specialty tool used by our SWAT team that's trained in that. All right, thank you all for coming and have a great day.